Because what they did was they took these Jonathan's sons were the priests, so they were together. It doesn't tell us, but I would assume that that's what happened because they brought this Levite up there with him, and so you're talking about the Levite, right? Yeah, they brought the Levite to be a priest for them, so I'm guessing they let him live his life out, being a high priest to them. I don't know. It doesn't tell us.
He just disappears.
He does. But it tells us that his sons, the man's sons, continues on for sure. All right, any other questions? All right, so chapter 20, verse 1, it says, So all the children of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba, as well as from the land of Gibeah, or Gilead. And the congregation gathered together as one man before the Lord at Mizpah. We're going to see that phrase several times in this chapter. They were together as one man. What does that mean?
They were all united.
Yeah, they were united. Okay, so at the end of chapter 19, these parts of this concubine that was cut up, that was sent across the country, caused the people to be in an uproar. They were pretty angry. All the tribes, except for Benjamin, was angry about it. And so all of them come together, and as we go through chapter 20, we're going to see Israelite, the phrase Israelite, which refers to the 11 tribes. And then we're going to see Benjamin, which is by itself. So there's a division here. So when you see Israelites, that's talking about all of the nation besides Benjamin. All right, so they come to Dan, from Dan to Beersheba. So all over the land. Dan's all the way up. We've talked about Dan, right? That's where the Levite is now. And Beersheba is all the way down here. Beersheba is all the way down here. This is the southern area. When you look at the time of David, the land of Israel was from the Euphrates all the way down to the river of Egypt, which is not the Nile. That's the river, the Wadi of Egypt. And so Beersheba would be the southern part. So it's saying all these tribes, they came together as one at Mizpah. So verse 2, it says, And the leaders of all the people, all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers who drew the sword. Now the children of Benjamin heard that the children of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. So they have an army of 400,000 foot soldiers. It's quite a few, right? 400,000 men. Verse 3, it says they had heard that the children of Israel had gone to Mizpah. Notice the rest of verse 3, It says, Then the children of Israel said, Tell us, how did this wicked deed happen? So the Levite, verse 4, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, My concubine and I went into Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin, to spend the night. And the men of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house at night because of me. They intended to kill me. Stop there. This is a new information. What did he know was going to happen to him if he went outside? He was going to die. So what does that mean about his concubine, as we talked about? He knew she was going to die. So he was more worried about saving himself than he was his wife. As we talked about, when men quit protecting their families, what happens? Women and children are abused. Women and children are mistreated. And we see that this man had no care for his family. And his wife was, of course, murdered. And she was really taking his spot. She died for him, to save him. And so, continuing on, it says, But instead they ravished my concubine so that she died. So I took hold of my concubine, cut her into pieces, and sent her throughout all the territory of the inheritance of Israel, because they committed lewdness and outrage in Israel. Look, all of you are children of Israel. Give your advice and counsel here and now. Is he telling the truth here? It says they wanted to kill him, but instead they killed his concubine. What did he leave out? That he chose that. Is he not? He's not being truthful with them, is he? So he's not telling the whole story. He's just saying, well, they did this terrible thing. Now, of course, children of Israel, they're upset. This is a terrible thing that what they had done, but they're not given all the information either. Was he at fault? Yes, 100%. But, I mean, of course, there was a wickedness, and we talked about how this wickedness was punishable by death in chapter 19. So, verse 8 says, all the people arose as one man, saying, none of us will go to his tent, nor will any turn back to his house. But now this is the things which we will do to Gibeah. We will go against it by lot. We will take 10 men out of every 100 throughout all the tribe of Israel, 100 out of every 1,000, and 1,000 out of every 10,000, to make provisions for the people, that when they come to Gibeah and Benjamin, they may repay all the vileness that they have done in Israel. So all the men of Israel were gathered against the city, united together as one man. So we talk about, I've skipped over a lot of my notes here, but this was a wickedness. Of course, rape was punishable by death, Deuteronomy 22:25. Somebody want to read that, Deuteronomy 22:25. And this is important to notice this, because what we're talking about is their intention was to kill these men because of what they had done, right? And as we go through this chapter, we're going to see that this was sanctioned by God. God was an approval of what they were going to do. So Deuteronomy 22:25.
But if in the open country a man meets a young woman who is betrothed, and the man seizes her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die.
Okay. Somebody read also Leviticus 18:22.
You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination.
And then chapter 20 and verse 13.
If a man lies with a male as he lies with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death.
All right, so under the old law, rape, incest, things like that, homosexuality was punishable by death. So their reaction to this wickedness was to wipe them out. This was exactly what God said was to happen. And that's important as we go through this chapter. And so here they were going to fight at Gibeah. The numbers there was 40,000. So 40,000 of the men, they went by lot, and they got everything that was needed for this battle. It's going to take food, right? It's going to take supplies. It's going to take all that. And that's what these men did. That's what it's talking about there. Knox had this interesting quote. He said, I have heard that in Vietnam, it took 3 men behind the lines to provide for every single combat soldier. That's pretty interesting. You know, it takes a lot behind the scenes to protect or to supply one person that's on the line. And that's what's going on here. And they were united, right? So verse 11, they gathered against the city together as one man. There's that phrase again. So then verse 12 says, and the tribes of Israel sent men through all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, what is this wickedness that has occurred among you? Now therefore deliver up the men, the perverted men who are in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and remove the evil from Israel. But the children of Benjamin would not listen to the voice of their brethren, the children of Israel. Instead, the children of Benjamin gathered together from the cities of Gibeah to go to battle against the children of Israel. So what was their reaction? The Benjaminites. No. This all could have been prevented, right? All they could have done was go to Gibeah and Ramah, gather up the men that were doing this wickedness, bring them to the children of Israel. They would have been punished, killed, and that would have been the end of this. But what did they choose to do? Double down on their sin, protect their people. That happens way too much, right? Where friends, family, whatever the case may be, is doing something that's against what God says, and they back them. They change their views. That's what they did here. Instead of to unite with them, they decided to fight against them. Think about this. We talked about Romans 1, right, last week. Romans 1 talked about, we get rid of God. What happens? Well, that's moral decline, right? You get rid of God out of your life, there's that moral decline. First, it starts with the homosexuality, then it goes into every other wickedness. But what did verse 32 say? So let me read that. Romans 1 and verse 32. I think it's 32. 31 or 32.
Who, knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them.
All right, so the wickedness, the punishment for those doing all those vile things mentioned in Romans chapter 1 is punishable by death. It's punishable by spiritual death, right? But also, what does it say in verse 32? Those that what? Approve of those things. Those that support those and those things. They may not be doing them themselves, but if they support and approve of it, what is their punishment? The same. As we look at the Benjamites, and we talk about how they almost get completely wiped out, the whole nation, why is that the case? They did not get rid of the wicked men, and they stood up for them. They supported them, they backed them. And so what did that mean? They were going to get punished the same way as those men were going to get punished. And so that's what happens. Now think about this. Somebody read Leviticus 10, verse 1 through 7. And as I mentioned, you know, they were family, right? So they're trying to stick together. Or how many times do families stick together in someone doing wickedness? But we have an example of it being the opposite. Somebody read Leviticus 10, 1 through 7.
Then Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his censer and put fire in it, and put incense on it, and offered profane fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded them. So fire went out from the Lord, and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. And Moses said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord has spoken, saying, by those who come near me I must be regarded as holy, and before all the people I must be glorified." So Aaron held his peace. Then Moses called Mishael and Elizabeth, the sons of Uzziel, the uncle of Aaron, and said to them, "Come near, carry your brethren from before the sanctuary out of the camp." So they went near and carried them by their tunics out of the camp, as Moses has said. And Moses said to Aaron and to Eleazar and Ithamar his sons, "Do not uncover your heads, nor tear your clothes, lest you die, and wrath come upon all the people. But let your brethren, the whole house of Israel, bewail the burning which the Lord has kindled. You shall not go out from the door of the tabernacle of meeting, lest you die, for the anointing of oil of the Lord is upon you." And they did according to the word of Moses.
All right, so Nadab and Abihu, they did something they were not supposed to, right? And God punished them for that. But what's interesting is Aaron was told by Moses to not mourn their death. And Aaron didn't. Because of what it would do, it would show to the people that he did not support what God had done in punishing them for their wickedness. And so here we have the right way that was supposed to be handled. But then Benjamin, they chose to stick by their family and not do what they were supposed to do by letting them be punished for their wickedness. They instead defended them. And so notice verse 14. It says, "Instead the children of Benjamin gathered together from their cities to Gibeah to go to battle against the children of Israel. And from their cities at that time, the children of Benjamin numbered 26,000 men who drew the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who numbered 700 select men." So the Benjamites was 26,000 that could fight, plus 700. That's 26,700, right? How many did Israel have? Way more. 400,000, right? So, to me, of course, God's on the Israelite side, right? They have the bigger number. You would think that no matter what, they're going to defeat them, right? Well, things get interesting as we go through the chapter. But, continuing on, verse 15, "And their cities at that time of the children of Benjamin numbered 26,000 men who drew the sword." I read that. Verse 16, "Among all this people were 700 select men who were left-handed. Everyone could sling a stone at a hair's breadth and not miss." So, the Benjamites, this is interesting, the Benjamites were known to be left-handed.
I was going to say, that's a lot of left-handed.
That is a lot of left-handed people, right? 700 of them had to be left-handed. So, but it was known. So if someone was left-handed, they more than likely were a Benjamite. For some reason, that trait continued on through that time. But they were also known for being very good with a slingshot. Kaufman says this. Caudell tells us that it had been estimated that stones weighing up to 1 pound could be projected with uncanny accuracy at speeds up to 90 miles per hour. Imagine that. A 1 pound stone going 90 miles an hour. That's going to do a lot of damage, right? Now, a bullet, it's a few ounces going 2,000 miles an hour. That does a lot of damage. But a 1 pound rock flinging at 90 miles an hour is going to do a lot of damage. Holman's dictionary says this: weapons of 2 long straps with a piece between them at the end to hold the stone, a patch of cloth or leather with 2 braided leather cords on either end would hold a smooth stone. The slinger then twirled the pocketed missile above his head. Release of one of the cords would eject the stones toward its victim. The blow would disarm, destabilize, knock out, or even kill the enemy. Have you ever seen videos of people that use some of these kind of slings like this? It's pretty destructive. So you can imagine 700 of them, well, a good amount of them, being able to do this. It's going to do a lot of damage, right? All right, so that brings us to verse 17. It says, now besides Benjamin, the men of Israel numbered 400,000 men who drew the sword. All of the men were at war. All were men of war. Then the children of Israel rose up, went to the house of God to inquire of God. They said, which of us shall go up first to the battle against the children of Benjamin? The Lord said, Judah first. Okay, so the Israelites do the right thing, right? What's their first reaction? Let's go ask God. What did they ask God? Who should go first? I think it's interesting. We don't know why these events happened. It's not stated why. We can kind of imply, I guess. Maybe they should have asked, should we go do this, God? They didn't ask that. They didn't ask that yet. But they do here just ask who should go first. But Judah goes first. Why do you think it would be Judah? What was significant about Judah? Yeah. If you remember back when Jacob was blessing his sons, what did he tell Judah? The scepter would not depart from them. They were going to be a nation of leaders. They were going to be a nation of kings. Of course, that relates to Christ, going back to Christ, as you stated. But I think that's significant. It's the fact that God says, my nation that is going to be the tribe of kings is going to go first. And so, verse 19, so the children of Israel rose in the morning and camped against Gibeah. And the men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin, and the men of Israel put themselves in battle array to fight against Gibeah. Then the children of Benjamin came out to Gibeah, and on that day cut down to the ground 22,000 men of Israel. And the people that is in Israel, the men of Israel, encouraged themselves and again formed the battle line at the place where they had put themselves in array on the first day. So they go out to fight. You would think that the Israelites would win, but they didn't. They lost 22,000 men that day. Why? I don't know. We're not given a reason. Like I said, all we can do is imply or guess, I guess is the word I want to use, guess of why.
So it says that they cut down 22,000 Israelites, but it doesn't say necessarily that they cut down 22,000 of Judah.
Well,
Was that mixed losses, or did only Judah go out by themselves?
Judah went out first, so I'm guessing it
So
seems
maybe
that they
put
all
in the forefront.
they were in the forefront, and then they all followed along to fight. And it says Israelites, which in this chapter kind of it puts all of the 11 tribes together.
So they may have
So,
taken the heaviest losses, but
they-
not all the losses.
Yes, I would think they probably took the heaviest because they were first.
But always before, when people went out into battle, God always
Yes, that's right.
They asked him who they should go first, but he did not say that he was going to deliver.
Yep. I think that's right. And so, like, we're not told exactly why this all happened, because it's going to happen again. But that's a good point. It's the fact that God didn't say, I have delivered them into your hand yet. He will. He hasn't yet. And so, but did they get were they upset? Yes. I mean, they were upset, but what did? They formed themselves in a line again. They're ready to fight again. Okay. So that's verse 22. So then, verse 23, then the children of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening and asked the counsel of the Lord, saying, shall I draw near for the battle against the children of my brother Benjamin? And the Lord said, go up against him. So God again says, go up against them. Something else to think about. Israel is doing the right thing, right? They're doing the right thing by punishing this tribe. We don't know what the rest of Israel was like at this time. Maybe they were also doing wicked things. This one wicked thing was just enough for them to want to go out and fight. I don't know. So that's something else to think about. Maybe God is punishing them for some of their wickedness too. I don't know. Just something to think about. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, all we can do is guess on that. But Kathy's got something there with thinking that God has not told him he's defeated them already yet. So verse 24, it says, so the children of Israel approached the children of Benjamin on the second day, and Benjamin went out against them from Gibeah on the second day and cut down to the ground 18,000 more of the children of Israel. All these drew the sword. So they kill another 18,000. So then verse 26, then all the children of Israel, that is, all the people, went up and came to the house of God and wept. They sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening. And they offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. Now, what is different about this time of them going before God than the last two times? That's the key. Yep, that's the key. They humbled themselves. This time they humbled themselves. They wept to God. They fasted. They offered sacrifices to God. They're asking for God's help. They're saying, we need you. Now, the first two times, maybe it was they were proud. They were saying, well, we can handle this. We've got enough men. We just want God to tell us what to do. Now they're relying on God. And I think there's a difference there.
I think Holly had a good point, though, as far as sometimes doing the right thing is costly.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, it could be.
correct something.
Yeah, it does. As I said, don't know. It's just interesting to guess. Yeah.
And then they had the 40,000 men to begin with, so that meant out of the two fights that they did, they'd be killed all of them, right?
They had 400,000.
Well, I mean, go back to here where the 40,000 that were chosen together, what was needed to fight.
Yeah, those 40 went out and gathered things for the army and then came back. So there was still 400,000. Yeah. But yeah, if it was just 40, they would have been done. Yeah. No, they've lost now, was it 20, 22? They've lost 40,000 men. Yeah, 40,000 exactly have died. So this time they have offered sacrifice to God. So then verse 27. So the children of Israel inquired of the Lord. The ark of the covenant of God was there in those days. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, stood before them in those days. So this points to an earlier time, right? Phinehas, the son of Aaron, he was the high priest after Aaron. The end of the book of Joshua or Judges is 400 years later. Phinehas would not be alive 400 years later. So this would point to an earlier time in their history coming into Israel. Anyways, notice it says in the last part, it says, saying, shall I yet again go out to battle against the children of my brother Benjamin, or shall I cease? And the Lord said, go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into your hand. So as Kathy stated, now God has said, I will deliver them into your hand. I have a quote there from Kaufman. It's basically what we just talked about. They needed to humble themselves. But that gets us to verse 29. It says, then Israel set men in ambush all around Gibeah. And the children of Israel went out against the people and were drawn away from this, went up against the children of Benjamin. Sorry, I skipped a verse. On the third day, and put themselves in battle array against Gibeah as the other times. So the children of Benjamin went out against the people and were drawn away from the city. They began to strike down and kill some of the people as other times in the highways, one of which would go up to Bethel and the other to Gibeah. And in the field about 30 men of Israel. And the children of Benjamin said, They are defeated before us as first. But the children of Israel said, Let us flee and draw them away from the city to the highways. So all the men of Israel rose from their place and put themselves in battle array at Baal Tamar. Then Israel's men in ambush burst forth from their position in the plain of Gibeah. And 10,000 select men from all Israel came against Gibeah, and the battle was fierce. And the Benjamites did not know that disaster was upon them. The Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel, and the children of Israel destroyed that day 25,100 Benjamites, all that drew the sword. So they started with 24,000, right? 700. Here they have killed 25,000 or 5,100. So they had smoked pretty much all of the men. There's only going to be 600 left at the total here. And so verse 29 through 35, something to notice here. Verse 39 through 25 is a summary of what happened in this battle. Verse 36 through 46 is not another battle, but it's a detailed version of what happened during that battle. So kind of remember that, because as we start verse 36, it's going to sound very familiar. It's just a more detailed version. And so verse 36, it says, So the children of Benjamin saw that they were defeated. The men of Israel had given ground to the Benjamites, because they relied on the men in ambush whom they had set against Gibeah. And the men in ambush quickly rushed upon Gibeah. The men in ambush spread out and struck the whole city with the edge of the sword. Now the appointed signal between the men of Israel and the men in ambush was that they would make a great cloud of smoke rise up from the city. Whereupon the men of Israel would turn in battle. Now Benjamin had begun to strike and kill about 30 of the men of Israel, for they said, Surely they are defeated before us, as in the first battle. But when the cloud began to rise from the city in a column of smoke, the Benjamites looked behind them, and there was a whole city going up in smoke to heaven. And when the men of Israel turned back, the men of Benjamin panicked, for they saw that disaster had come upon them. Therefore they turned their backs from the men of Israel in the direction of the wilderness, but the battle overtook them, and whoever came out of the cities they destroyed in their midst. They surrounded the Benjamites, chased them, and easily trampled them down as far as the front of Gibeah toward the east. And 18,000 men of Benjamin fell. All these were men of valor. And they turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, and they cut down 5,000 of them on the highways. Then they pursued them relentlessly up to Gideon, and killed 2,000 of them. So all who fell of Benjamin that day were 25,000 men who drew the sword, and all these were men of valor. And so, like I said, we're getting more of a detail of that battle here. Really not much more to talk about. We just see that they used the tactic of bringing them out of the city to draw them out, going in, defeating the city, having them turn around and run back and then be ambushed again. And so, verse 47, it says, But 600 men turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon, and they stayed at the rock of Rimmon for 4 months. So 600 men is all that's left. That's going to be key as we get into chapter 21. Imagine this, that we're going to see in the last verse. Well, I'll just read it. Verse 48, it says, And the men of Israel turned back against the children of Benjamin and struck them down with the edge of the sword from every city, men and beasts, all who were found, and they set fire to all the cities that they came to. So the 600 men fled, hid in the rocks in the mountains. The Israelites went back to every one of the cities and burned them all to the ground and killed every person. That means women, children, everyone were killed. there was not one person left in the tribe of Benjamin. There was just those 600 men who are now hiding for their lives. And so here, a whole tribe of people is completely almost wiped out. What would happen to the inheritance of Benjamin, the land? Who would get it then? I don't know. I think that's a question that's brought up in the next chapter is, what are we going to do? This was their land. This was their inheritance, and now we have almost wiped them completely out. Now it's not the 12 tribes of Israel, it's now the 11 tribes of Israel. And they're going to see this problem as they get into chapter 21. But 600 men, like I said, ran to the rock of Rimmon, and they stayed there for 4 months. The rock of Rimmon was about 15 miles from Jerusalem. So as we talk about Jerusalem, it's right here at the edge of Judah and Benjamin. So they had run to about 15 miles away from Jerusalem to hide at that time for about 4 months and stayed there as we get to chapter 21. And so everything else was destroyed. Their cities were destroyed and burned to the ground. So pretty terrible destruction, right? But as we said, they supported. They did not back down. They chose to not let their people that were wicked be punished, but yet they decided to back them. And because of that, they saw the same punishment that happened. So, any questions on chapter 20? I think it's a good spot to stop. I've got notes for 21, but I didn't hand them out yet. But we'll do that next time. Any other questions? So next week is Fifth Sunday. So I'll preach in the morning, and then we're